The Smoker in the Dark. A Carping Gnome ghost story. Night fishing can be a nerve-jangling experience at the best of times, especially if one is 13 or 14 years of age. It was the late 70s and I was fishing a wide area of the Stourbridge Canal. It was a winding hole where barges could turn round. By then it had silted up considerably, and there were reed and lily beds along the far margins in the shadow of old poplars. Lofty whispering trees, they leaned against each other as if for support with the weight of the moon in their arms. Slowly the full moon rose above them, bringing the night to a late August evening. Clouds drifted over, and all was dark and silence except for the occasional flip-flop splashes of tiny roach. It was cold too during those tense, intangible hours on the edge of autumn's change. Already a few leaves had fallen. There had been a somewhat melancholy atmosphere to the evening, and I felt forlorn at times, sitting there in the dark and the chill, alongside Martin, a fishing friend. Now, Martin was slightly younger than me. He must have been 12 or 13, and it is astonishing to reflect that our parents allowed us to go night fishing at all. However, the late 70s was a different country, and permission had been granted. The canal had been stocked with carp recently, and there were one or two older, well-established carp swimming around as well. On previous outings in the day we had managed to catch a few very small carp, our first carp ever, but my elder brother David's night sessions had led to captures of decent eels, slightly larger carp, and even one ultra-precious canal tench, and so we fished on in great anticipation. The rats were rustling through the hawthorn hedgerow behind us, and the hours dragged on quietly, dragged by uneventfully, with our silver paper indicators refusing to budge 1 inch. Somewhere a clock chimed 2 and Martin said with a start, "Somebody's walking along the bank." Sure enough, we could see a lit cigarette, a red spot of heat burning a hole in darkness. It was bobbing along with the brisk steps of its holder at about waist height. "Who is it?" asked Martin. No reply came, and the figure, the dark silhouette of a smoker, was now only about 10 yards away. The figure stopped its back against the hawthorn hedge, the cigarette held low as if the visitor was lost in thought or pondering his next move. "Who's there?" asked Martin once more. His voice hadn't broken yet, it was still a nervous treble voice. Still no reply came. All we could see was the dark shape of the stranger and his burning cigarette. My voice had recently started to break, and so in my lowest possible tone I said, "Who's there? I have a knife." I'm not especially proud of that threat, but in fact I didn't have a knife. I had a pair of open artery forceps in my hand and clicked them shut to create, I hoped, the sound of an opening flick knife. The forceps were there, of course, for unhooking purposes. My threat seemed to work, but here was the strangest thing, because we did not see the smoker turn and go, and we heard nothing, but we noticed the man's burning cigarette, a red light bobbing over the open fields behind us, moving away, bobbing away, until it was visible no more. Somehow the figure had managed to pass through a hawthorn hedge and a barbed wire fence in total silence. Odd to relate, we had never really been terrified, we were merely relieved that he had gone. Come the daylight and a grey autumnal dawn, we were busy unhooking an eel I had just landed, and all thoughts of the stranger left us for a while. but upon leaving we couldn't help but look at the hedgerow behind us and the barbed wire fence, and we began to wonder if our nighttime visitant had been flesh and blood, after all, despite his burning cigarette and the dark silhouette of his hesitating form. After all, the canals of the Midlands can be spooky places after dark. It is not so unusual to encounter things that take some explaining.